welcome to this episode of Assisted Laudable Living, hosted by yours truly, Jasheena Shelton. I'm so glad you guys tuned in today. You know I'm thrilled, right? I am thrilled that you are here with me because this show is going to start like pretty much every other one. I had a question, right? I'm not from the people who believe that you shouldn't question God. I got questions for God. I got questions for the Bible. I got questions for humans. I got questions for myself. So here's where we are. This is part of a much longer conversation. Like, we're going to have to really do a deep dive with this one as far as exploring the roots and the intricacies of this one. So I don't want you all to think, oh my gosh, she's glossing over something so serious, because it is serious and it does deserve and command amount of time. However, assisted laudable living, having a mood or general attitude towards healing, that's what laudable means, right? Is really only a 20-25 minute show. So we got a little bit of time for this big issue, right? And so if you are part of the body of Christ, you consider yourself a Christian, especially a Christian in these here United States, you may have noticed the population in the pew on a decline from years past. And there are several theories on this. There have been studies on this. There are different perspectives on this. We're going to come at this from a sociological lens point and a psychological lens point. Okay? Okay. And so, of course, I'm like, oh my gosh, things aren't like they used to be. Is this progress? Or is this something else? And of course, you know, you have those people who want to blame everything on the devil. The devil did this, part of the devil's plan, yada, yada, yada. That's not what I subscribe to. I believe that plans and the things that happen to us oftentimes are for the shaping and the making and the rephrasing, right? Or the reconditioning of our hearts and our minds, because at one point in time, most of us did not believe what we now believe about certain things in life, and we have this reshaped belief system because we've been through some things. I believe the elders used to tell us, just keep on living, right? And if you're afforded that opportunity to keep on living, it will change your mindset and your perspective. It will humble you some, because you know, when you're a youth, you're like, oh, I would do this, I would do that. When it's my turn, I'm gonna do it this way. And you kept on living. And then you found out why certain things were done a certain way. Oh, it wasn't to harm you. It was to protect you. It was to keep you. It was to hold you. Yeah, okay. Anywho, we're going to look at 2 verses today. And then we're going to tie them together. But this, again, is part of a bigger picture, a longer series that we're going to have to keep exploring and keep digging into and keep rooting out, because this is huge. Like, I feel that this is huge. And so the question for me was about love, right? Because a lot of us throw around love and love, and love, and these ideas of love and this romanticism and these Disney-esque things, and we think that's love. Yeah. I kind of want to challenge some of that. Where did that thinking come from? How did we get here? And then there are those of us who think that love is definitely an action word. So what actions are we putting behind the word if we actually mean that we love the person and the being? And then if we as humans do that, what did God mean when he was talking about love in the Bible? And did it mean the same thing in the Old Testament as it did in the New Testament? Because look, okay, let me just give you the scriptures. Let's start there, and then we'll work our way through. So our first scripture comes out of Ezra, book of Ezra, the 8th chapter, verse 21. Go ahead on. I need you to pull it up with me, so I'm not the only person looking at it. So again, we in the Bible app. Ezra 8:21. Okay, we're going to do it out of the Amplified version. Now, this is Ezra talking. Okay. Then I proclaimed a fast there at the river AHAVAH, so that we might humble ourselves before our God to seek him a safe journey for us, our children, and all our possessions. So what is happening here? Because it's just one verse, and I want to make sure we put it in context, so it's grounded and it means something. Okay, cool. So in context, Ezra the 8th chapter, we have the Israelites returning out of exile. This is the second set. Returning out of exile. Why were they in exile? Because they were disobedient and can't get right. Okay? That's the summation. Right? Because we only have a little bit of time together, right? So they couldn't get right. They went into exile. They didn't have a ruler, a king, or a land. They were stripped of all that, taken into captivity. And some of them were in captivity so long they started to like it. Like, oh, well, do we really have to go back? Why would we go back? It's kind of okay here. We know what to expect. Anywho, the king had given them favor because Ezra had requested of the king that they be able to go back. And the king was like, you know what? Y'all go ahead on. Go ahead on back. So before they could really get on their trip good, Ezra was like, let's gather at this place. Let's get everybody together. And then he goes on and he names the number from this group and the number of that group. And it was a lot of them. It was a lot of them. And Ezra was like, all right, we're going to do a head count. Boom, 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 boom. 100 here, 20 here, 300 there. You got to read the whole chapter for yourself, right? So it was a large group of them. And so he gathered them at the river, which is called AHAVAH. Now, when you study what AHAVAH means, it means love. Yes, see, it's all going to tie together, right? And it's the action part of love. It's not oh, so emotional. This is beautiful. I love this. This is an action and a transactional type of love. Okay, cool. Put a pin in it. Boop. So the river that they're meeting at is called love. And then what they did there after they got themselves together, did the little head count, realized, wait, some folks is missing. Let's go get them. Tell them to come on here because we got a journey ahead of us. We all going in together. All right, before we could go in together, there's some things we need to do because we're going back to Jerusalem. We're going back to our land that God gave us, that our ancestors marched over to. So we're going back. But before we can go back to what was, there's some things we've got to get off of us physically and mentally. We are no longer exiles. We are returning citizens. Okay, cool. And so before they could do that, Ezra said we're going to have to declare a fast. That is a sacrifice, fast, to abstain from, to seek spiritual connection or reconnection. So I'm going to put this down so I can obtain this. The time I would spend doing this, I'm now going to spend seeking God, seeking his wisdom, seeking his insight. I'm going to, that's what the fast was. Okay, cool. And so then, not only did they fast, the fast was a fast for something. He says, at the river AHAVAH, that we might humble ourselves before our God. Humility. Okay. Okay. We don't have much time. To seek from him a safe journey for ourselves, our children, and our goods. So generationally, all this needs to be blessed before we go. Now, the place we're going, that's our place, but we have to get there. In order to get there, we might have to go through the enemy's camp. In order to go through the enemy's camp, we could have really asked the king for his protection, but when Ezra asked the king to leave, he reminded the king of the God that the Israelites serve, and it is a God of protection. So therefore, he didn't ask for troops. He didn't want he did not want the king's footprints on their protection, because he had to prove to the people as a reminder of the God they really serve. Right? Okay. And the God they really serve is a God of protection. So they fasted, they prayed, they sought the Lord for what? For protection. Not just for them, but for their children And their possessions. Okay. And God did it. And God met them where they were by the waterside, where they had gathered. He met them there, heard their prayer, answered their request. Boom. Okay. So that AHAVAH love. That's what we're talking about. The river or canal, just depending on which translation you read. To me, it doesn't matter if it's a river or canal because they're both waterways. And we're talking about living water. And who's the living water? Okay, great. So then let's go to the New Testament. Like, how is this all going to tie together? It's going to work. Trust me. We're going to Romans, the 5th chapter, and the 8th verse. Now, usually, we don't just take one verse, right? We have to read the whole thing. We have to tie it together. Okay. But just for the sake of time, we're going to do one verse, and y'all are going to study on your own without me. And then you're going to leave in the comments what you studied and what you got. Okay, cool. So then, verse 8 says, Romans 5, New Testament, verse 8. But God clearly shows and proves his own love for us by the fact that while we were still sinners, Christ died for us. Now, when we look at the word love here, it is translated as agape. Agape and AHAVAH, same word. Same word? Same word, same meaning. Again, action. But you're telling me two different words. Yes, they have the same meaning. In this region, it was AHAVAH at this time in history. And then in the New Testament, we got to agape. Okay? Same thing. There is a requirement on this love. This love is backed up by action. And the love starts off with action because it says, while we were yet sinners. So it's an inclusive word. So while Jasheena was yet a sinner, and while you, insert your name, was yet a sinner, because we are born into sin, we are shaped in iniquity, while we was out there, separated from, or like the Israelites, while we were in exile, again, separated from, not the place that he called us to. Okay, so while we were yet sinners, he proved his own love towards us. Who did that? Christ and God. God did it, that he sent his son, right? For God so loved the world, he gave his only begotten son. Cool. Who's the son? Jesus. What did Jesus do? Sacrifice. How did he sacrifice? He laid down his life. For who? For us. While we were yet sinners. So not when we got good. Not when we came out of exile. Not when we were willing to come back. While we were still out there. He is loving on us. Right? Okay, so now when we said, God, if you just get me out of this one more time, I promise I'm going to do something. Now while we begging and pleading and going through the stages of grief and agony, but while we were out there doing all that, the plan was already in action. Okay, now how do these verses tie together? This is where I think we are. We're at a pivotal point in history, right? Now we know God is outside of time. But we right now in this human suit that we're in, we are in time. And at this time in history, there seems to be a great exodus from the church. I have yet to attend a regular church service. I know I've said this before. A regular church service where the church building is full of people. Now, there are people who will say things like, I'm church hurt, comma. Then there are people who will say things like, I'm not religious, I'm spiritual. I subscribe to spiritual. It's a relationship between me and God, comma. Then there are people just like, I'm not going to church. I've never been to church. I don't know church. I don't know you, and I don't know your God. All of these things are true at the same time. And then there is what? A remnant of people who still feel that community, collective community of a body of believers on a consistent basis is necessary for their relationship. Oh, yeah. See, it's all going to tie in together because that remnant, that body of people who still press their way on a Saturday or Sunday to a building that is called church, that may have a cross on the outside of it, symbolizing that they are Christian in root system, right? Still says that even though some humans within this building or the church collective may have caused me some distress, emotional pain, and things of that nature, which is valid, because humans will do some human stuff, won't they? That's still valid. Nevertheless, I'm going to make my way to join in with this other group of people who also have said, nevertheless, not my will, but Lord, I'm going to forsake not the assembly of myself. And for some people, that means digital discipleship. We'll talk about that later. And for other people, that means the actual physical gathering in the church building, right? So at a time when people want spiritual connection, because people do, they keep turning to all these other things, these created things, instead of the creator. And I think in large part, it is because of this AHAVAH. Because when love requires something of you, and you already have trust issues and mama issues and daddy issues and issues and human issues and issues the size will continue, to then say God, when in reality you don't want the human issues and you don't want the pain associated with that, but yet you still long for connection, here comes the disconnect, because you were in relationship with another human, and that human made their love transactional and conditional. You then put that on God, and God never set it up that way, because even if it was set up to be a transactional love, he started the transaction while we were yet sinners in Romans 5:8. Yeah, he started the AHAVAH right here in Romans 5:8. But God demonstrates his own love towards us in this. In what? In this, while we were still over there, while we were still up in Babylon, whatever your Babylon may be, there was already a river or canal that was flowing. There was already a body of living water waiting for the time in history, because now it's history, right? Where we would get ourselves together. And before we continue to fully pursue and try to return to something, we would consecrate ourselves and deny our flesh and deny the need to keep looking at creation and start looking at the creator. Something happens when we look at this level. It's surface. Even the human, that's surface stuff, right? We're called to look higher, look to the hills from whence cometh our help. We have to, our uplook determines our outlook. Our outlook should not determine our uplook. What does that mean? That means we are loved before we were created, right? Then once we get here on earth, in earth suits, because this is temporary, this is not our home. While we are in these earth suits that will one day pass away and return to dust, we have a responsibility, because what? While we were still there, or while we were there, Jesus had died in our place, because he knew we'd mess up. He knew that we would gather at the river and still mess up, because the Old Testament does not end in Ezra. Ezra is just one account of one snippet of history. The Old Testament goes on, book after book, prophet after prophet, love songs and poems and heart issues and relationship issues and more humans being human. And then comes the New Testament, because they're looking for a Messiah. They're looking for a leader. They're looking for someone to get them up out of this, because this adulting is not like the previews. And in order to really love, it requires a cutting away. It requires a sacrifice. It requires submission. It requires those things of us. But then there's the flesh side of us. It's like, no, you don't have to do that. No, you shouldn't have to do that. You can worship all these other demigods. You can do all these other things. You don't have to obey God. You don't have to do... And the whispers become stronger, and they become chants, and then we start repeating them and rehearsing them, and that nothing can come out of you but what's in you and what you're saying from the power of your tongue. The power of what? Life and death is in our tongue. So we start saying all the stuff that the world has said. Then we start getting the results that the world gets, and then we're like, well, where is God? At the river. Right there, waiting for you to gather yourself. Get yourself together. Oh, okay. And if someone's missing, go get them and tell them to come on. Oh, because we can't do this alone. It appears to me that God really likes community, and he really liked this group called the Hebrews or the Israelites, right? He really liked them, and he set them apart. He said, I will be your God, and you will be my people. And this is how we're going to do this thing. And somewhere along the way, everybody wants to talk about Eve listening to a snake and having a conversation with a snake. But what snakes are we listening to today? What serpents are in our ear today? Which ones are we willingly having conversations with and exchanges, and they just keep depositing stuff in us? And we talk about it's an algorithm, but had you not searched on that stuff wouldn't be so much in your algorithm. Or had your phone not picked up a conversation where you were in that place that maybe you shouldn't have been in, then those pop-ups wouldn't be on your phone. That's how this works. When we say, you know what, I am set apart, I am different, I am peculiar, and embrace that. Because what did Jesus say the greatest commandment was? He said, love your God and love your neighbor as yourself. And people really be focusing on love God and love your neighbor, and forget the fact that you gotta love yourself. And then my question is, how are you supposed to love yourself when oftentimes when you have these issues with God is because you had parental issues, because the people who are supposed to teach you what love was in all facets and dimensions walked in their humanity and not their own divinity, and were ill-equipped to teach you what agape was, because they don't know themselves. They couldn't teach you what AHAVAH was in your home because they were busy trying to survive. And then generation after generation, we keep getting further and further apart. But at this moment in history, there has to be a group of people who said, let's gather by the river. Let's go to the canal. Let's get ourselves together and find out what it is that we have been called to do, so we can get back to the place that we're supposed to be, Jerusalem. Not necessarily physically, because we're not going to get into that at 2025, but get back to that place where we're supposed to be, where we're supposed to have that AHAVAH canal internally, right? Well, I'm supposed to internally wrestle with God and come out limping, and internal wrestle with his word. I'm supposed to chew on it. I'm supposed to meditate on it day and night till it gets all inside of me. And then it goes to the areas of me that have been hardened, and the areas of me that I may have forgotten about, or the areas of me and my mentality and my heart that I need to yield to him so that I can continue to be what he's called me to be. But no, so many of us want to hold on to these labels and diagnoses and validate this and validate that. Look, you went through it. It is what it is. It didn't kill you. In fact, they thought they was going to kill you. However, they didn't know you had an appointment at AHAVAH, that you've been loved since before your parents met. And you were not loved so you could be in a place of abandonment and neglect and dissension and hate and tension and feeling certain ways about other human beings who are on a human experience. You've got to realize you're called higher. You've got to start turning your head from here outlook to here uplook. God, give me blinders. I want to love you the way that you want to be loved. And God's saying, this is how I want to be loved. If you're going to go and restore the relationship I have with you, I need you to look to me. I need you to seek me the same way you be seeking them memes. I need you to seek me the same way you be seeking that man. I need you to seek me the same way you seeking that raise on your job. I need you to seek me like you love me. That's what I got. The steps that we have to take are behavioral submission, denying ourselves, and humbling ourselves. We have to seek God's guidance. You don't have this. You're not self-sufficient. You are smart. You have more degrees than a thermometer. You got certifications from here to there. However, your GPS system is still programmed by other humans. The AI that you are using for therapy is still programmed by other humans. Okay. Acknowledging our complete dependence and divine provision comes from God. And then we have to have spiritual preparation for transformation. You have to believe that transformation is possible. We see these stories like, oh my gosh, I was in a hospital bed. I was on a bed of affliction and God raised me up. And then I had this disease and I had that disease and God turned my disease into a testimony. Does it really? Are we at a place where our bodies, these dust suits, have to be almost burnt up, devoured by diseases for us to realize and reconnect with God? That's what 2025. This is I feel that we have to dismantle our self-protective mode because we've built it on wounds, right? On parent issues, and we have to start opening up to the internal AHAVAH, canal, river, waterside experience. So I'm not sure what y'all are willing to do, but I would love to see it in the comments. You know, how are you going to get back to AHAVAH? How are you going to get to that place where you are surrendered before you go further? Before you think that you're about to go back to the way things were? When you want the latter to be better than the former, what are you willing to give, to sacrifice? How are you willing to show up in God's presence? Are you just going to pretend that church is just another thing we do on Sunday, another box to check off? Or are you really seeking connection? Okay. I mean, I just had some questions. So I'm posing the questions to y'all. Maybe you get something different. And again, this is part of a larger conversation. I know we've taken up a little bit extra time, but it deserves it. We're going to continue to explore this because we cannot continue the way we're doing. Because if you continue to do the same thing and expect different results, I heard that was the definition of insanity. And God, Jesus said, I've come that you may have life, have it more abundantly, but also let this mind be in you that's also in Christ Jesus. And Jesus' mind was not insane. So, we need to stop doing insane things. Yeah. Well, that's it for this week's session of Assisted Laudable Living. Thank you so much for tuning in. I look forward to hearing from all of you because this was kind of a hot topic. And again, this is just the overview. It goes deeper. So in the next few weeks, we're going to keep diving. And we're going to go deeper and deeper and deeper.